Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 1 finale of Obituary. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we get the opening of the episode, which finally gives us the answer of what exactly went down, and it's pretty much what I thought it was. I felt like in so many ways, I was like, it had to come full circle, like the whole deer situation, and it exactly played out like I thought, because I was like, from a writing perspective, you were already setting up to kind of imply like we're bringing it full circle with the deer thing in multiple ways. One, that's the one time in Elvira's life she can remember actually being happy. Two, the setup with her trying to replicate that, and she's like, high on her medication, and she's shooting, trying to recapture that happiness. But how did she, have captured that happiness the first time? Oh, she shot about a few of the bottles, but she missed one and ended up shooting a deer. And even though we never, I figured she had done it at some point in time, but we didn't get the full context of the scene at the time when she was remembering during her therapy session back in episode 4. She wasn't remembering everything, but now we get the full story from her dad's perspective about it. I guess him talking about things, helped fill in the blanks. But yeah, because first and foremost, I don't know if we knew that about Huey. Let's circle to him really quickly. I didn't know we knew that he was leaving his wife for Maria, but Maria was like, dude, it was sex. I just need to get out of this town. I don't love you. The letter that Ward found, was that last episode or episode before last? Whatever. No, I think it was last episode he found that letter. That letter was something Huey had sent her, but she apparently had never opened it. So, when it's all said and done, she needed to get out of town. So Huey, like he said, he hired Mal to steal the bag. And if Mal hadn't stopped to try and smoke a cigarette, Maria wouldn't have caught up with her. And ultimately, that led to the whole thing. Them being in the woods at the time. Elvira was shooting at the time. And rather than everyone ducking, she didn't want to let Mal get away. Or they were all trying to aim for cover. Whatever the case may have been. Maria had gotten shot, and Mal was actually going to help her, because initially, the way Mal made it sound like it's she's going to call the cops because I stole her bag. She kind of made it seem like Maria said that after she had gotten shot, and that's why she had left her. It's no, she had said that beforehand, but things were a little different. It's okay, I'm helping you now after you got shot, but you're not going to let the cops know, right? But then they stumbled across Elvira, and she's trying to wake Elvira up. She actually did legitimately try until she returned and realized, holy crap, Maria's dead. And so she's like, okay, if that's the case, I'm sorry, you're going to kill yourself, and you're already in the process of killing yourself. She's dead. I can't go to jail. I can't get mixed up in this. So she's the one that put her in the trunk. Because she said she was in the trunk. I thought Mal found her in the trunk because that's where Elvira put her. It's no, Mal's the one that had put her in the trunk because she'd actually, quote unquote, died while she was sitting outside. And then by the time she peeled off, that's eventually when Ward found them and then discovered the body and everything. But jumping ahead with the context at the end, because I was I guess she was already dead by the time Ward found the body. I was I guess my theory was wrong. And then we find out at the end of the episode, the moment they circle back to it, I was like, oh, please tell me you saw this through. And once again, from a writing perspective, it only makes sense to fully bring that all full circle. And lo and behold, they did. I was I knew it. He killed her exact same way I thought he would, basically covering her mouth and her nose so she couldn't breathe. Because once again, there were no external wounds on her body other than the gunshot wounds. So I was right, he didn't stab her anything, so he had to suffocate her, and he did. It also turns out he didn't actually even move the body because she was still alive at the time. Well, because I think she was probably completely unconscious until he was trying to figure stuff out, and he was, I don't know what he was doing in the front of the car again. I guess he was going to crank it up or something, but whatever the case may be, he set off the horn and stuff, and that woke her up enough that she started walking off on her own. And Ward deciding to, whether that's 100% him, whether it's because 100% about protecting Elvira, whether it lies somewhere in the middle. It feels like it doesn't feel like it's as much about Elvira as you think it would be. You think initially you're like, oh, it's got to be 100% about her, but it might actually be maybe 70% about Elvira, 30% just being him. Because tying this all in, she asked him, like, why do you drink? You don't have to feel guilty. Like, I made a mistake and shot her, but it is what it is. It's still a thing of he helped cover up the crime, but it's like, is that what you're feeling guilty? Because I was thinking, because she was like, right, do you drink because you see something inside of me? And he's like, no, it's not even about you, really. It's about me. I'm the one that's got some darkness in me, and now I've passed it on to you. That's why he drinks, because it's about protecting Elvira by any means, but also it's like you wouldn't be in this situation if it wasn't for me. It's like we saw, in the flashback of episode 4, the darkness that Ward is capable of, and that's only a small inkling that we got it, but that dark, we don't know enough about Elvira's mom. Her mom might have had a dark streak too, so a little bit of darkness from mom, a little darkness from dad, or maybe it's all darkness from dad and mom was the light that ended up balancing it out. So maybe that's also supposed to be the poeticness of, hey, your dad who had all the darkness is still alive. Your mom who was the light that brought you into this world is gone, gave her life for you, but that all triggered the darkness in you. That the one person who had darkness in him, trying to be a better person, role model for her, ended up kind of doing everything he can not to let her submit to that darkness, but she still, life played out where she ended up submitting to it regardless. Like I said, maybe that's something we'll find out potentially in the future. We'll find out more about Elvira's mom. Like, we just we didn't get any time for it all, so we don't know who she was. It's ironic and interesting too, because what were Maria's final words? She's like, you're a monster. Everyone in this godforsaken town is a monster. It's like, when you look back on it in retrospect, a lot of people in this town are shitty. Because that goes back to my point where, like, the only people that probably I'd put them in the same vein of, like, okay, these are terrible people. Like, no one, like, deserves to die. Like, they deserve jail time, sure. But no one, like, the only people who've done something heinous enough that would deserve, like, more severe punishment would be like the Leonard and George of it all, which, as we know, George took the fall for his brother, but because Leonard was the one who was actually behind the wheel drunk driving. So that's the most severe, but the rest are money laundering and just being complete and utter assholes. That's about it. It's like, being an asshole shouldn't be the reason why you get murdered. Even something like embezzling shouldn't be enough to get you killed. It's like, yeah, you deserve jail time, but you don't deserve death. Or it's like that's all we really got. But it's like, showcase that this town is full of scummy people. Like, no one's like a good person. Everyone's got some stains on their soul in this town, essentially. It's like, there are like no good people. Everyone's questionable at best. So I think that's kind of supposed to be this overarching theme across not only the people Elvira's killed, but also the people in their lives, whether it's Huey, which we'll get to soon enough, Huey, Elvira, Emerson, Mal, Ward. They've all got something. Like I said, they've all kind of got stained souls in a lot of capacity. So ultimately, the plan is that Elvira and her dad come up with a plan, which, once again, I think this speaks volumes about him. To be fair, he covered up this crime 5 years ago, and he's kind of kept it pretty tight-lipped since then, so I think that speaks volumes about Ward. But also, like, they were, like, quick to be like, all right, we got to frame someone for this, and Huey ended up being the perfect fall guy because he was in the process of figuring it all out. Man, did they nail his balls to the wall. Holy crap, did that all play out so beautifully and play out so wonderfully in their favor when they were able to kind of stack everything against Huey. Because Elvira, obviously Emerson had his questions about, Ward's, his alibi for you and stuff like that. And Elvira came up with one that was reasonable enough. To be fair, Emerson likes her, so I'm sure he probably wasn't going to, fight her too much on, her excuse. It's like, right, she's like, this was better executed when I was practicing it. Now putting it in action, it sounds stupid, it's not working. It's like, no, it worked out in the end. But I think it's also, Emerson probably wasn't as focused because this is post him and Mal breaking up, and he is now, he admits how much he likes you. He's liked you since the moment he saw you type of situation, so they end up going back to his place and hooking up because the plan was she was trying to get into Huey's place, but then like they ended up shacking up. I think that was probably just a bonus, or maybe that was the intention the entire time. Whatever the case may be, when she got up and her came back where her hands went, I was like, what was that about? Oh, it's because we found out later on she had stashed the Maria's passport. So they had taken that letter from that he had sent to Maria and made it look like, oh, Huey was kind of crazy. Oh, he killed her because he wanted her to himself and they were having an affair. And that's, it's that fatal, almost like the fatal attraction of it all. Like the story writes itself in that regard. So they lay that forth. Emerson was still trying to defend Huey, but it didn't look good because Rose, to be fair, likes it simple. The town's already had to deal with enough death and terror and all this is happening. So it's like, we need to like nip this in the bud. So I love that they end up confronting Huey just as he's being like, hey, I think there's a killer in town, because he compares one guy who died and he compared it to Sylvester. They both had epilepsy, and it's like, Sylvester only had like an eighth of the medication he was supposed to have in his system compared to this guy who was on the same, like a similar medication and, regimen because of the epilepsy. And then it turns out like, oh, like I think there's a serial killer, there's a killer involved. And she's like, no, I know it's you. And just everything falling into place. Oh, they found the rifle. It's like, well, he got the rifle from Ocean. And it's like, but he hadn't really let anyone know about that. If he'd gone to the cops first with this, it wouldn't have looked as bad as it did. I mean, to be fair, he did have it out in the open. It was just in his office, like with like a tarp or like a cloth or something covering. But it's like, I guess they're not going to think too much on it. You take that in conjunction with, oh, they went to see Ocean. Ocean denied it altogether. I guess it's like, well, he's keeping his mouth shut because I guess that also he didn't also want to be associated with any of his other criminal activities because he's trying to live a good life now, so he's putting it behind him. It's like, yeah, like that would mean that I found the gun and I ended up selling it to Huey instead of giving it to police, especially because it's a murder weapon. So, like, I'm not sure that was his reason. And Tom is just like, yeah, I'm not going to tell the police the truth about my situation because I'm not trying to draw me nor my family into this situation. I want to be, hands clean of all this. I doubt Ward hit him up to let him know what was what, but Tom knew, like, I guess he smelled the opportunity. Or maybe Ward did let him know what was what. But yeah, every opportunity someone had a chance to tell their truth, Huey got thrown under the bus. It's like, so much worked against you in your favor. Like, all the stuff and people who should have been helping you with all of this, who were pieces to the puzzle to you figuring yourself out, are the people basically burying you deeper and deeper in this hole that is your metaphorical grave. It doesn't help either with the Mal of it all, because Mal's supposed to be the one that proves like, hey, I hired her to steal Maria's bag. That was all the extent of it. I had no intention of killing her. Stealing her bag was going to be my way of doing it. But Mal got hired by this drug dealing dude because that was like, because of what Elvira set up last episode, Mal ended up telling Sylvester's wife the truth. So now she ended up getting kicked out of her place. So she needed to make some money to kind of find a new place. She sells the drugs to Leonard. Luckily, she didn't take that first bump because like either the guy, because Leonard made it sound like the dude intentionally did that because he owes the guy money, but because he was going to pay like $5,000 and Mal was going to get like 400 of it. But I don't know if I don't know if it's just one of those like fentanyl things where just what it was cut with killed him, or whether it was meant to be like, because the way Leonard was making it sound like, oh, he intentionally killed me. So Leonard ended up taking a bump and dying, and it's like, oh, kind of poetic. It's sad, extremely sad and poetic because, well, first and foremost, he was the one that was actually behind the drunk driving accident, and George, who was innocent, not only went to jail for like 7 years for something he didn't do, he also got murdered for it. So that's kind of a whoopsie on Elvira's part. But also the true culprit ended up dying regardless. And Mal found her opportunity because she grabs up all the money and bounces. And that literally leaves Huey up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. It's like, like I said, everything that can go wrong in that moment does. The one person who could have had his back, whereas everyone else threw him under the bus, was Emerson. He was about to bring up, hey, there's still some unanswered questions about all this, but Rose was like, no. Don't do that. Just make it simple on everyone. Even though it's like, yeah, it's not completely open and shut. There is more to this. But because Emerson's just kind of like going to take the win, it's like, let's all take the win. We won. It's all worth it, because we found out a little bit more about Emerson's past because Rose did some digging. It turns out he's responsible for a dude dying. Basically, there was a 2-bit gangster who ended up murdering a dude, but he went to Emerson. Is like, hey, you give me this alibi, I'll give you some good information, because he was always aiming for that big story. And this 2-bit gangster sometime later on actually murdered another person, so that death is on him. And it just shows you how far Emerson's willing to go for the story, which is, kind of like a bad part of his personality. And because it's like, yeah, let's just kind of accept it as is and move on. And we cut to 6 weeks later. Elvira hasn't killed anyone, because for her it's like, oh, like, I'm in love and this feeling is better than murder and so forth. Didn't last long. Gave her about a month and a half until she was like, kind of getting that murdery itch, and her work is starting to suffer from it and stuff. So she wants to be honest with Emerson, but she can't. You could never be honest with Emerson, because who he is, for one, we've seen he's willing to take anything and turn it into a story. I mean, obviously he's already in the process of like writing his book and stuff. If he hasn't already written it, it's 6 weeks. I doubt it's enough time to write the entire book, but he's got these deals to make, because he's like, oh, I'm meeting up with Sky and Netflix about the documentary of it all and stuff like that. So a lot of deals are still being made, but he's definitely, it's working out in the end for him on a monetary scale side of things. So, because it's like, if you ever told him the truth, not only would he probably distance himself from you, he'd also use this opportunity to like make money or an opportunity off of your story. So yeah, he's not the best person to kind of like be. He's the one person you don't want to be honest with. He's the only person she can't be honest with. She can't be honest with her dad either, because he's already a little scared of how she turns out, and he finds out more about this. It's like, I don't know, despite them having a lot of like dark proclivities in a lot of capacities, his darkness might not run as deep as hers. I mean, at least not what we know. Like I said, we've only seen that one instance of Ward in the past. Who knows what else he got up to? But the fact is, we even got what we got. Him pulling a gun on someone, threatening to kill him and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, he never went through with it. But to be fair, he went through with killing Maria. So there's enough about Ward's history we don't know. So there probably is more to that darkness in him that we've only scratched the surface of, essentially, because obviously this whole season's been about Elvira's darkness, but that darkness didn't just start with her, it started with her dad. Like I said, maybe it started with her mom too, or maybe her mom was kind of the light, that yin and yang balance, and it's always kind of been off because her mom, who was the light, is not in her life or whatever, never has been since, she died at childbirth. Also, once again, Emerson being the dogged person that he is, I love that he's sitting there talking with Ward, and they got on the subject of food or whatever. I forgot how the conversation. Oh yeah, like Elvira told her she didn't really have to buy me food, like make me anything. We could just go to this place, but the dangers of food poisoning. And Ward's like, oh, is that right? And Emerson's like, yeah, it is right. It's like that was a part of Elvira's story, that her dad got food poisoning and she was looking after him. And you're like, without even like, he's still pushing because he knew like Ward has a part to play in all this, because that's the thing he wanted to show Rose, was the thing from Dolly about like what car that was there, and it's like, that's not Elvira's card, that's probably specifically her dad's card. So like, once again, Ward was already on his radar like in episode 4, but episode 5, like he was like, oh, maybe I'm wrong, but then like the Dolly information ended up being like the nail in the coffin, but he couldn't quite pull the trigger because, for one, Rose didn't want it, and it's like, right, this town needs peace, so let it go. But the journalist in him, it's like, I know there's an even bigger story here, but I don't want to push too much, because also it's my girlfriend's dad at this point in time, so it's kind of wonky and complicated in that capacity. But then, like, we were watching the news, I was looking, like, I had to pause the TV. I was like, does that TV say, like, the bottom banner was like, oh, man came back from the dead? I was like, they're showing the water. I was like, there's no way you're saying what I think. You're not setting up what you, and then it plays out. It's fucking Sandy. I was like, no shot you did that. I was like, that's amazing. Bring it in all full circle, because obviously it's like, yo, that was your like first one. I was like, fuck, Sandy's alive. I was like, how did you survive? Because it's also poetic too, because remember, Elvira never got paid for Sandy's never got paid for his obituary, because she was never able to publish it because the wife never officially declared him dead. After like 7 years, you have to, but she didn't want to, and because of that, like Elvira never got paid for that. Even so that was the irony behind that one. Even though she accidentally killed him, I mean, she accidentally tried to kill him. She just pushed him, but then saved him, and then actually pulled through again. And it's like, it also makes you wonder if she had actually gone through with the first push, would that have been at just the right angle or whatever to have killed him? But maybe because when she pushed him a second time, the way he landed was completely different. You never, that small difference could have been what made the difference. Turns out he was caught by human traffickers. He was held the entire time. Then like there was like a raid on some place and he was found. It was like, Jesus, you've been through the rigmarole. But the thing is, he has memory loss, and he's dealing with like trauma from being a part of what he's been a part of. So Elvira went to go visit him. But at the same time that's all happening, Emerson figured out on his own about Sandy and basically published a report about him being a liar. So rather than this harrowing story of like all that he's been through, oh, we thought he was dead and he was human trafficked, but he's still alive and he's back reunited with his family despite all the hardships. It's like, no, he's a pariah in town because he faked being sick, and everything. So it's like, okay. And, it's like, oh, he borrowed a few bucks from some people here and there. Does he really deserve all this? It's like, once again, it's like, well, Victoria kind of did a similar thing, skimming a little off the top, and, that warranted her fake suicide and, murder by Elvira. So I was like, yeah. But Elvira needed to know how much he remembered, but he didn't remember anything. But he remembered enough when Elvira was like, oh, do you remember my mom? And he started smirking. She's like, yes, because of course you would. I guess it's because maybe there's not too many people. I don't know if that's... Because I was like, do we know enough about Elvira's mom for that to be... Because I was like, maybe he referenced her in episode 1. Once again, I'm watching these episodes so spread apart that I'm like, I don't remember if anything ever came up in that conversation, the back and forth they had to make her push him in the first place. Because like, I think he had bad-mouthed her mom or something like that. And he kind of like smiled about it this time. But he only remembered Elvira because she wrote his obituary and he was talking mad shit about it. It's like, well, to be fair, she was planning on murdering the last person that talked shit about it. But she's like, don't do it. He's an old man. He doesn't remember anything. But he kept going and going. And it's like, oh, okay, I see how it is. And she murdered him. I was like, okay. I was like, you let his wife go out. She's going to eventually come back. I was like, how are you going to do all this? And then it's like, oh, she just straight up did it. His throat was slit. I was like, okay, you didn't even hide that like an accident. But then like the one she was sounding wounded, I was like, oh my God. I was like, did you make it seem like a break-in happened and that the assailant got away? It's like, yeah, but that could turn into a manhunt type of situation. So in her mind, it's like the simplest and easiest thing to do is his PTSD kicked in. He thought I was one of the human traffickers, cartel people that had him. So he stabbed me, and then like he went, sat down, and slit his throat. But it's like, if he slit his throat, would the knife be where it is? If you look, the knife was sitting on a table. Like, wouldn't it make more sense? Like, I wonder, did Elvira like... she probably most likely put his hands on the knife, but I was like, wouldn't it make more sense like if he did it for like his hand to drop down and the knife to be on the floor or something? It's like, no, the knife was sitting on the table. So I'm like, that's one of those things where I'm like, wouldn't you pick up on that? But I guess it's the indication supposed to be like, no, everyone's terrible at their job unless like the evidence is really laid out for you. I mean, it's like, once again, Rose ended up... And they did do their due diligence. It's just everyone along the way was just like shoveling more and more dirt on the Huey's grave, essentially. But yeah, like Elvira was able to kind of get away for that and able to get her first murder in like 6 weeks. Well, more so, isn't it? Because wasn't the last person... Because she didn't kill Mal in episode 5, nor did she... Yeah, because George was like the last person she killed, wasn't he? Because she didn't kill anyone in episode 5. She didn't kill anyone. And this was the first death she committed... Murder she committed... I said the first death. The first murder she's committed since George's. And even then, it's like... I guess technically you'd be like Victoria was the last one because George died by car accident, like a car hit him, a drunk driver hit him, but she was still responsible. So once again, the flippancy in which, oh, am I responsible for this? Like my hater, I tried to save her because I didn't want her to die. I wanted to be the one responsible for killing her. It doesn't count if I don't do it, but you were fine and kind of got your satisfaction of the fact is George got hit by a car. So that's when I'm like, I don't know. She seems so flippant with that sometimes. The real kick in the teeth was the Huey stuff because he was still trying to figure it out, but he doesn't have enough money to pay for his lawyer or to keep his lawyer on retention. So his lawyer, it's like, yeah, I'm leaving. And so we end up finding out that no one's going to like listen to Huey right now because everyone's turned against him because the Chronicle ended up finding out after he got arrested or whatever, they started looking into some of the billings and stuff, or just like the payment situation at the Chronicle. It turns out Huey was like screwing over all his workers. I was like, shut the front door, because everyone was basically kind of getting paid a flat rate. It was almost like paid by commission, but more specifically, you were paid a flat rate based on the articles you wrote, sure. But rather, it's like, as a whole, they probably are salary workers, but instead of paying them a salary, he probably paid them a flat rate of like, you get paid certain much for like an article, and any other money they would be making, he basically pocketed the rest of it. So he was embezzling, and you're like, because he was in gambling debt. You're like, once again, everyone's got dirt on them in this town. And so it's not even like Huey was squeaking clean. I mean, to be fair, he was having an affair. Not like, once again, I'm not going to be like, oh, you're a shitty human for having an affair. You know, if I was on the receiving end of an affair, if I was married or even just in a relationship and my significant other cheated on me, it's like I'd be probably singing a very different tune. But as being single right now, like I think that just probably like doesn't like equate as being like a shitty thing to me, because I'm not going through that. Yes, on an emotional level, yes, you know, it sucks, you're a shitty person, but like on a personal level, it's like I don't think, you know, I feel like adultery kind of gets treated like the worst thing ever. I know from like a religious standpoint, it definitely gets heavily frowned upon, but like on a personal level, I'm like, sure, from an emotional standpoint, I'm like, oh, kind of shitty did you do that, but I don't think it makes you a terrible human being. Like, humans are human. You're gonna make it's a very human mistake in my opinion. But either way, my point is like that being levied against him alongside all the embezzling, that to me is like, yeah, that's the worst thing you can do. And especially when his lawyer was like, yeah, like, do you realize what your employees had to do just to get by? I was like, that is ironic, isn't it? I was like, yeah, you're the reason why Elvira started this in the first place, because she needed money, and like you were screwing everyone over. And then we also found out like through the flashback, because once again, it's been a while since I saw episode 1, that Huey was like, because she's like, what am I going to do to make money? He's like, well, I guess you're going to have to start killing people. It's like, so not only were you screwing her out of her money along with everyone else that worked at the Chronicle, you also gave her the idea in the first place. I was like, that's fucking hilarious. And then you also got a postcard from Mal, who paid him back the 40 quid that basically, it's like, oh yeah, like here's that 40. Here's these 4 tenors you paid me. It's like, now we're even. And she left a note, kiss mark on it, everything. And he laughs, but he's also breaking down at the same time he's laughing. I was like, that sucks, Huey. Like, Huey's not done. He's already pieced it together that Elvira's the one behind all this, but it's also his fault. So I don't think he's going to take any accountability on that part. He's going to be like, yeah, it's my fault. Which, to be fair, even any shitty things that he did, whether it was embezzling or, you know, putting everyone in such a desperate position where they had to do whatever it takes to survive, yeah, it sucks on his part. It was super shitty on his part. That doesn't take away from the fact that Elvira still did what she did. Granted, he was like the ignition switch that set this all in motion, but it doesn't change it. Like, that, it comes down to a culpability thing of like, he put them in, like, Elvira's decisions are still her own, but it is that thing of, but yeah, like, humans will act a certain way when you back them into a corner. Like, even the most rational person will act a certain way when they feel desperate, when they are put into a corner where they got to do whatever it takes to survive, to make ends meet by whatever means. So that's where you kind of get into that complicated area of like, is Huey just as responsible for Elvira's outcome because he set it all in motion by putting her in such a desperate situation? So I don't know, it's really interesting. So it seems at the end of the day, Elvira got away with everything, and she went to visit her mom. And for her, it's like, yeah, I sometimes worry about getting caught, but then I remember what people live in this town, and they're all fucking idiots. So it's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. That worry goes away. But eventually, it will catch up to me. But when they do catch me, I'm gonna take them back here, and just like, no, I'm not gonna blame you or anything, Mom. When they ask me like, how many of the people here are you responsible for? Like bringing a lot of people to this, putting an end to so many people for them to end up here at this graveyard, and her response is not nearly enough. So back to it, just smile on her face, ready to get back to it. So she took like her 6-week break, but she's right back to it. And once again, it's going to be interesting to see who runs the Chronicle now that Huey's in jail. But like I said, he's not done. I'm sure he'll still be, like, if there is more in the future, I'm sure you can see his storyline continue where he's going to try and prove his innocence. But I don't think he can really do anything to throw Elvira under the bus now, especially because a lot of people are going to herald her as a bit of a, survivor. You survived Sandy's attack, and, what could have been his, like, redemption of, like, he came back and stuff. And yeah, he might have been an asshole and a liar, but hey, he came back. That story kind of already went down the drain because of Emerson's story, but also like Elvira made him even worse off by doing that, and all the people that, like I said, added more dirt to Huey's story kind of buries him deep down where it's like he can't probably get any like room to breathe in the metaphor of like they're digging his grave and like putting more dirt on top of it. Like he can't break through enough to get any air, and he's just suffocating of like, I know the truth, but no one else is going to, and I'm probably going to rot away in prison. We'll see. And what happens with Elvira and her dad? Like, the weight of everything still continues to stay on him. Will he open up to Elvira about it? Maybe not, especially because she doesn't open up to him, because he's reluctant to kind of, I don't think he wants to put that on her, and he's probably afraid of who she'll see him as, because it's less about her and it's more about him. So would you see Mal again? Would she ever come back? It's like, well, she kind of has no reason to. She doesn't really have family here. The only family she has is Ocean, and she loved them, but they've kind of probably going their separate ways. She needs to kind of go away and disappear after the whole Leonard thing as well. Because she also like ran off with that drug dealer's money, so it's extra reasons not to come back. So it'd be interesting to see where all this would go. Obviously, I'm getting to this super, super late. It is January 17th at the time of me recording this, so at the time, it has not been confirmed whether or not the show is coming back for a second season. I'm curious if, like, because this is an Irish show, so I don't know if, like, it's actual, like, a full-blown Hulu production, like Hulu put all the money behind it, or they just kind of like, hey, we had the licensing rights for it, like someone else produced it and made it, like Hulu didn't put any of the budget for it. So that's why I'm like, is it like a Hulu original, or is it more like a we licensed it, so it's kind of a Hulu original, but so I'm curious, because that means whether or not, like, it might not just be Hulu's decision. There might be other people at play here who make that decision. Hulu might front some of the money to make it possible to make another season, so without them, if it doesn't work, like it's not like it probably can immediately be shopped around. So it's like it probably does, regardless of it all, come down to Hulu's decision whether or not to renew it. So like I said, it's been like a month and a half since it's dropped, because didn't this drop like, no, it's been like 2 months at this point in time, because I think it didn't just drop like November 17th, maybe. I know it came out sometime in November. I remember that. I just can't remember the date, but I want to say it's been like 2 months now. It's still nothing. And it varies from show to show. Some stuff you find out about quicker than others. So I do hope we do get a season 2. It ends off on a note where you're just kind of like, if you wanted to end it here, you could. I don't know what Irish shows typically, how they run. Like, what I mean is, because British shows is like, sometimes they can be like one and dones. A lot of times, and sometimes that's on purpose, sometimes not. But this show is in a unique situation where it's like, yeah, everything's resolved. Like the entire story about what happened to Maria and how that ties into Elvira, and she kind of got away with everything. You could end it here. So even if it doesn't get a second season, it'd be very satisfactory. But I'd still want a second season. I'd love to see what Elvira continue to get away with it. Like I said, this is being an international show. I can see this, like, being an Irish show, I don't think it would be like this would continue forever. It probably would be, because, like, just, like, the European side of, like, television of, like, yeah, you get 2, maybe 3 seasons at best. Usually at most 1, And so we'll see. I would love to see where things would go from here. I mean, there's still plenty of room where more story could be told, but like I said, if they wanted to end things here for whatever reason, it's still a satisfactory enough ending for it to be okay, but I still would want more. So we'll keep our eyes peeled. I'll keep my eyes peeled. I say we as in just like anyone that's coming across this, who's curious about that information. Like, I don't know why I talk about we in that regard, not like there's anyone else but me behind this channel. I don't know why I do that sometimes. But I mean we as like anyone that's coming across this and listening to it. Well, as fans of the show or whatever, we as fans will just have to keep our eyes peeled and find out, whether or not anything comes about, any announcements for a second season. So, but yeah, I've done enough running my mouth. Really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.